This is, I know I'm probably not going to get a lot of people to watch this, and I'm really going to try to curb my cursing and any sort of things that might be taken as racial slurs, because I would like to download a copy of this and post it to my YouTube channel too, to really get it out, because this is the only topic I've covered that has exposed this many things in one topic. As we'll discover here, this exposes first the inanity and utter objective falsehood of sociology being considered a science. This is proof that it is objectively not a science. Two, it really goes to show how much a certain tribe out there, or however you want to put it, that doesn't necessarily have to be racial in makeup or ethnic in makeup, just, a little, where we're speaking about tribalism in a broader sense, how anti-white it is. Three, and it goes to show how people will go to the ends of the earth to promote confirmation bias, just confirmation biases. And four, it's just laced with hypocrisy like you wouldn't believe. It's really just to, if I were an SJW, this is what you would call problematic. This is how well-intentioned white families can perpetuate racism. If you want to know a little bit about this, the sociologist Margaret Hagerman, name check aisle 3, the sociologist, not sociologist, the sociologist. So already promoting her to this level of mythical importance. The sociologist Margaret Hagerman spent 2 years embedded in upper middle class white households, listening in on conversations about race. Okay, now I am willing to take this as a given and offer my opinion on it, my rebuttal on it, based on the assumption that what Hagerman saying here is actually true, though insert African skeptical kid meme here, that really, you spent 2 years just hanging around the houses of white people, eavesdropping on conversations they were having with their children. We're expected to suspend disbelief that an upper class progressive liberal Jewish lady with an obvious agenda of not liking white people was welcomed with open arms into these homes and allowed to listen to these parents as they reared their children and taught life lessons to their children. That she was just allowed to be there as a fly on the wall, with nothing to back it up, by the way, other than her word. No recorded interviews, no videotape footage of this ever happening. Just her word that, yes, I did this. Now, I'm not calling her a liar, but when you think about the things people lie about, go watch a Nuke's Top 5 or a Slapped Hand video and see how many tens of thousands of people fake ghost videos just to get some views or something. Go see how many people lie about UFO abduction. Go see on college campuses how many students lie about racism because suddenly they get easier classes and they get to go. Look, here's the thing. When minority students, POC students, even whites who join in with them as allies, when they protest, quote unquote, at schools, they protest for racial inclusiveness or diversity, or they protest against any type of racial incidents or hatred, what happens is that they get their days, their weeks, sometimes like we saw in Mizzou a few years ago, it even turns into literal months, where they get to stand out with their friends using their iPhones and yelling every once in a while. They're getting credited for that class. When you incentivize people to do these kind of things, people do these things. People do whatever they're incentivized for. We see this down the chain in primate behavior, in mammalian behavior, period. You incentivize your dog to do tricks with the treat. That's how the dog learns to sit and shake and beg and roll over and speak and, sick balls, Chopper. That's how they learn those things, through the incentivation am I saying that word right? The incentivizing methods that are promoted to get something to do your will. Welcome in the chat to Jesse Winfrey. So let me get into some of this. When Margaret Hagerman was trying, I just want to call her some kind of names right now, but like I say, I am going to try to put this on YouTube, so bite my tongue to blood come out my nose. When Margaret Hagerman was trying to recruit white affluent families as subjects for the research she was doing on race, one prospective interviewee told her, "I can try to connect you with my colleague at work who is black. She might be more helpful." You know, the implication here being that white people are somehow afraid to talk about race, when white people are told constantly that speaking about race is not their domain as white people. It's a catch-22. You cannot do anything, you cannot exist in this world as a white person without being somehow problematic to these grievance mongers who just create they turn every molehill into a mountain. Things that aren't even molehills. They'll give rise to a mythical molehill to raise up to a mountain, like planting the magic beans in the beanstalk. It's insanity. This is just crazy. What was I going to touch on here before I got into this? I don't know. Anyways, let me continue here. This is the book she wrote. White Kids Growing Up with Privilege in a Racially Divided America. Now, I want y'all to understand something here. This is why I say this is probably the most important stream I'll do. Nobody will watch it. Nobody will comment on it. That is what it is. I'm still going to do it regardless. Because unlike this sociologist, I was actually trained as a scientist. I actually know about the scientific method. The type of methodological approach you would take to creating a testable falsifiable hypothesis and graduated it to a theory. The objective nature of creating a predictive model of utility, whereas sociology is non-empiricist and doesn't concern itself with that because it gets in the way of a result supporting the presupposition. Now, look at this here. I want y'all to look at this here. You tell me how true this is or just how much of a business this is. This book released 2 years ago. In 2018. Hardcover. Look at that. That's US dollar right there. 75. This is 2 years later. So you imagine when it first came out, how much did it cost? Probably $119, $139. And that's all that was available. That's all that was available until earlier this year, just 3 months ago, when the paperback became available for $18.95. So she spent 2 years supposedly, no audio tapes, no videotapes, no verified that I've seen anyways, signatory parents coming along saying that yes, they actually participated in this study. None of that, just her word. Like I say, I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying that's all I've seen. And I've researched this quite a bit ever since last night. I'm airing this on a Sunday evening at 7 p.m. God Emperor Trump time. So for about 10 hours, I've been researching this and looking into it because I wanted to know what I was talking about. Like I say, I'm going to cast this on multiple platforms. It'll probably do nothing, get no views. It'll probably be too long-winded for a lot of people. A lot of people don't like my voice. Maybe they think I'm boring. Maybe they think I'm stupid. It is what it is. We all can't be soy gun of a cuck. I apologize. But this is what it's about. It's not about exposing any truth. It's that these people, they realized when they took a sociology class that they pretty much participated in a pyramid scheme. They got all of these untold thousands of dollars. 50, 100, some $150,000, especially if they go through a doctoral track where they're getting a bachelor's in soft science, a master's in soft science, and then a doctorate in soft science. And then they end up $150,000 or more into debt with no way to recoup those losses. So what do? Well, we need a market to attack here. And what does the market do? The market says, well, let's go after white people, because that's never been done before. And it would be fine if you were doing that with something that bore even a minor resemblance to reality. But as we're going to see here, and which I'm going to get into here, I apologize for this huge preamble. Jesse Winfrey in the chat says, LOL 75 for a book that does what? Sputter propaganda? Even if it was an actual scientific book, you can go buy like volume 1 through 33 of evolutionary biology, actual textbooks, for like $30 a piece. And maybe people are religious and don't want to, and don't really agree with evolution. And I'm not trying to get into that. I'm just saying that that's the difference. That you can buy actual scientific literature that will actually teach you something for half the cost of what this crazy Trabs lady, whose knows best, is pushing on us. Let me get into it. It summarizes 2 years of research she did talking to and observing upper middle class white families in an unidentified... Look, they don't even identify the city where this took place. No one in here... It's all anonymous. It's all... We're to take this woman's word for this. That she spent 2 years of her life. And this is what I'm saying there. This is what I'm saying. They're calling this science. They call her the sociologist. They call this science. This doesn't even make the grade for your CD level reporting on a source. That everything's going to be anonymous. An anonymous source said about an anonymous location and an anonymous group of people that white people were horrible. What about what other race could you do this? What other group of people could you do this to? Homosexuals are bad. Transgenders are all mentally ill degenerates. I'm not saying that, but imagine you said that. Transgender people are all mentally ill degenerates, and that's my takeaway from spending 2 years with transgenders failing to raise children whose names we won't release in an unidentified, unspecified location. I would probably be arrested for publishing that book. Yet for white people, white children this is targeting. That's fair game. Let me continue reading this. To examine how white children learn about race, she followed 36 of them between the ages of 10 and 13, interviewing them as well as watching them do homework, play video games, and otherwise go about their days. So she was just there. She was just there. None of the kids 13 years old took any iPhone video of her or anything. She never snuck into anybody's Twitch streams when they was playing video games, Call of Duty, online and, poning each other. Nothing of this. Nothing exists except her word of this. Like I say, don't take my word for trying to say that's factual, because that evidence might be out there. And like I said, I'm willing to discuss this on the merits of it being truthful. I'm just highly skeptical that it is, because even the area where this supposedly happened is unspecified. And they're trying to call it scientific. These kids and their parents display a range of beliefs about race. Racism is not a problem, one girl tells Hegerman, adding that it was a problem when all those slaves were around and that, bus thing and water fountain. Really. Make the kids sound exactly how y'all have been purporting that they sound, yet we've never had evidence of them sounding like that, except when it's coming from the mouth. And everyone clapped. Am I right? This is the meme. And everyone clapped. When Anna Kasparian was in the line with the voters, they were MAGA hat voters and disparaging gays and immigrants, and she had her phone out tweeting Cenk Uygur about all the money they were going to make now that they dispelled with their union notions, and didn't get any evidence of it. But she told them that they were idiots and she was fucking better than them, and everyone clapped. This is the level of stuff we're to believe. Jesse says in the chat, arrested because you're terrible for using your brain. It's pretty much what it's going to come down to if we don't nip this stuff in the bud. Meanwhile, the girl's mother nods along. So you're sitting there with the mother and the daughter, just sitting there, just talking to them casually about race. Oh, would you like to stay for dinner? We're having bacon and eggs. Breakfast for dinner. It's kind of a tradition in our house. No, thank you, ma'am. I'm kosher. There's your first clue to get it. Hey, 122. Go. You have to go back. Other parents in the book have educated themselves better, but often intentionally or unintentionally, still end up giving their kids advantages that, in the abstract, they claim to oppose. Now, look. This is the crux of the book here. We're taking it as truth. She specifically sought out families that were affluent, but only white families that were affluent. So this is keeping the Joe Biden thing alive. They laugh at Joe Biden for making it a gaffe, but it is truly what they believe, that poor kids are every bit as smart as white kids. Because they think only white children have any kind of wealth. Look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She grew up in the 1% compared to the white people in New York that would live in like Long Island, Staten Island, Brooklyn, the Bronx, or anybody else, white, black, Latina, otherwise. She grew up affluent. There are all kinds of people affluent that you could go. See, I wouldn't mind if you wanted to say, I want to see how affluence affects people. How actually having wealth affects people to the struggles that I believe exist for race in the lower classes of society. But no, she has to qualify it not once, but twice. She whittles down from affluent, of which she'll find a lot of people, but whittles it down even further from affluent to white and affluent. And she's going to take everything that is objectively emblematic of affluence, yet leave that out and attribute that to only them being white. This is the bait and switch of the progressive liberal social scientist who needs their result to support in total their presupposition. Because more than wealth, more than status, more than anything, the progressive liberal needs to be right, that they're better than you. They will sell their soul to know that they're better than you. That she is right about white people means that she's better than you. Then comes the money, then comes the accolades because she's Jewish and female. She's a double check mark on the scorecard. So she's just going to front load this and bait and switch everyone. I spoke to Hagerman, and that second group kept coming up in our conversation, how despite their intentions, progressive-minded white families can perpetuate racial inequality. The one thing that they don't do is show what racial inequality is. Now, I want people to pay attention to what sociology purports itself to be, and then we'll talk about what it actually is. Sociology is the study of society. Of course, society, sociology, patterns of social relationships, social interaction. It is the epitome of a social science, obviously, that uses various methods of empirical investigation and critical analysis. Now, these are two things that you can say are objectively untrue. They're not true. They're verifiably, patently, empirically, observably false. That sociology relies on empirical investigation and critical analysis. If it depended whatsoever on any type of analyses that were the least bit critical, then not only would this would have been a documentary with names and faces, or at least blurred out, but you could hear their voices. The place would be specified, at least some kind of generalness about the place, at least in its juxtaposition against the have-nots, as this is being purported as the haves. But none of that took place here. It's all anonymous, 100% anonymous. It is not a science. And here she is here, looking like if Shoe on Head was born in a kibbutz. She also discussed ways they can avoid doing so. The interview that follows has been edited for length and clarity. The one thing that bugs me about sociologists saying that there are racial inequalities is that they're not honest about how they approach it. If they were honest and still reached a conclusion that there were racial inequalities, I would support them. But they are 100%, without a doubt, without exception, 100% of the time about liberal progressive causes that will only focus on affluent white families. What about all 30 million people in mountain hollers and mountain ranges and the Appalachian Mountains who live in the valleys and the hillsides, who are 3 times poorer than inner city blacks? Why don't you come down to them and use their outhouse and help them rig up getting water from the creeks to study how those kids learn about race? Why don't you do that? No, because I'll tell you exactly why they don't do that. Because this is what it's about. This is about progressive. This is about white wealthy families who consider themselves progressive yet aren't anti-white communist yet. That's what this is about. They're there for progressive causes. They got white guilt eating away at their souls, and they want to be 110% about progressive causes all the time. Anybody that tells them they need to be on this progressive cause, oh, I got to be for trannies walking into the bathroom with my little girls. Okay, I'm for that because that's what I should do. No justice, no peace. Equality for me. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I got to wear my safety pin that says I'm a white ally. Okay, ship me a box. $250 a month. I can afford that. My husband got a raise. All of this. But they're not communist. They don't want to give up everything, risk giving up everything they have. They don't want diversity forced on them. They believe that they should still have freedom. Therefore, progressive causes, as long as they happen somewhere else outside of their lives, they'll support them. And there's nothing wrong with that morally. There's nothing wrong with that morally. I am, speaking to me personally, I am 100% for helping the homeless to get shelter. If that means I would lend my time and labor to make that happen elsewhere, yes, I would do it. If that means I would lend my money to donate to make that happen elsewhere, yes, I would do it. But that doesn't mean I'm going to let them into my house to shack up with me. And see, that's what Hagerman wants. Except since she's a oy vey, because she's a Trabs lady, she doesn't want it either. Ethno-state for me, not for thee. She wants to judge these white people as being these horrible people who they promote diversity, yet as we'll find out here, they don't actually inflict a diversity upon themselves. And that's what's promoting racial inequality. Not that Maggie Hagerman would ever do that either. She wouldn't. She wants other people to... That's the sign of being a good liberal. You're not a good progressive Marxist unless you're empowering other people and forcing other people to act in your proxy. That's what we hear with open borders. Open borders, let the immigrants in. No, not in our neighborhoods and our schools, in y'all's neighborhoods and schools. And when you're reaching on that level where it's affecting other people's lives, it is morally reprehensible. Now, when we're talking about a homeless shelter that's going to go up on a designated piece of land that's not inflicting harm on anyone, okay, that's one thing. But when we're talking about a border collapsing, that anybody that wants to come in can come in, and the progressive liberal Marxists, they want that, just not for themselves. And that's what Hagerman's trying to do here, is say that you're bad people because you agree with diversity and you agree with racial equality, yet you're not giving up everything you own. You donated a kidney but didn't donate both. You're a horrible person for wanting to live a life. It's basically what this is. Here's an interview. Joe Pinsker asked our favorite Gorillian survivor, one reading of your book is that the way white parents talk about race with their children does matter. But but that what you call the bundled set of choices they make about what types of people their children encounter every day might matter even more. Can you talk about that set of choices and what it determines? She is in no position to make that determination. That is an impossible determination to make for her from that vantage point, perhaps from any vantage point. But because this is liberal on liberal playing softball, this is going to be set up for her to knock it out of the park. Women empowerment. Oy vey, Goyam. I used the phrase bundled choices because it seemed to me that there were some pretty striking patterns that emerged with these families in terms of how they set up their children's lives. Patterns for how wealthy people set up their children's lives. Yes, so they don't have to slum it. You know, people who live in the affluent parts of Virginia, and I live closer to West Virginia, Kentucky region, in the actual mountains. People who live in the metro area, and they're paying, you know, they got average mortgages of $600,000, or, you know, right outside of D.C., Alexandria, and Arlington. Average rent of like $2,400 to $3,000 a month. When their kids want some life experience, they might take them camping, but you know what they're not doing? They're not shipping them down to spend summers in the hollers. Why would they want that for their children? They're trying to provide their children with good lives. Them doing that for their children has no effect on other people's children. What you're saying is that it's their job to be the parents of all the other children. All the little colored children. All the little coloreds of the world. You're saying that it's their job to rear them too. No, they got parents. And I don't want to hear any of the nonsense about, oh, but racial... No. If these children had mothers and fathers who actually stayed in school and worked jobs, they'd be doing just fine. Even with only mothers and on welfare, they still got iPhones and PlayStation 4s and big screen TVs and are wearing Air Jordans. So, you know, don't give me this stuff about financial inequality. Let's go on here. For example, I talk in the book about how choosing a neighborhood leads to a whole bunch of other choices. About schools, about the other people in the neighborhood. Decisions about who to carpool with whom to carpool. Speak proper syntax if you're so smart. Decisions about which soccer team to be on. You want to be on the same one as all your friends, and all these aspects of kids' lives are connected to their parents' choices where to live. Look, white people are the only people who are told that they're bad for wanting to live around people of their own kind. When black people want to do it, we hear that they have a common struggle. They have a common ancestry. They have a common culture. So they meld better together. When Latino people want to do it, Latinx, we hear that they have a common ancestry, a common culture, cultural bonds, religious bonds, cuisine bonds, musical bonds. So it's okay when they do it. When Jewish people want to do it, fuck, don't even dare try to stop it, because you'll probably be taken to the Hague for crimes against humanity if you stand in the way of Jewish people wanting to create Jewish-only communities. Especially if they're a special kind of Orthodox Judaism, like the Hasidim but don't believe them, with their curly cues and fucking weird-looking fedoras. Only white people are judged for wanting to live around other white people. If you're Jewish, if you're black, if you're Latinx, you are considered as supposed to want to be around people of your own kind, because you share so much in common culturally. Except white people, they have robbed us of culture by changing the definition of culture. Culture used to mean, when it was founded by an actual physical anthropologist who created culture that gave birth to cultural anthropology, the social science. But when culture was originally defined as a concept, yes, it's a conceptualization of things, but it was a much deeper conceptualization than what it is now. When culture was first conceptualized, it was the underpinnings, the foundational bedrock on top of which the mutable factors of culture are built. Like now we say culture is food and music. Well, no. Culture is, how do you farm your food to get food to everybody? And, you know, how is your production of music? Do you just bang on lids and shit to make sounds? Or, you know, are you creating actual instruments through the processes of trial and error and sedentary practices of improvement. That's what culture used to be. So now they've robbed culture from white people. They've just we'll take that from y'all. We'll not only take the fact that y'all have culture, but we'll take the very meaning of culture so that y'all cannot claim to have culture. Therefore, when white people want to live together with other white people, the only possible reason that they assert can be racism, to promote racial inequality. Yet these assholes will literally still claim that what they're doing is science. They're doing science. They are shitting all over the chessboard and claiming that they won. And for some reason, more people agree with that they won than they don't. Or else they wouldn't have this kind of power to do this. This crazy ass is selling her book, or was selling it, for $75, probably more. A book that has no verifiability. Is that a word? It has no credibility. But there is no process by which it can be verified. There is no verification that anything she's saying in this book actually happened. It's all unsolved mysteries. Where's my buddy at? Robert Flack, whatever his name was. And today we learned the story about... Yeah, we know. But white people cannot live together, want to live together. We don't have any underpinnings of cultural traditions. Right? It's not like we share music in common, or cuisine in common, or nationality in common, or religion in common. No. We're not allowed to live together as white people, because when we do it, it's promoting racial inequality. When non-white people do it, it's because they are allowed to take pride in themselves and that they have shared cultural traditions that they want to promote within their own communities, because that's what makes them feel comfortable. They don't want to be othered. White people have to other themselves, or else they're considered horrible, awful, no good, very bad people. I'm trying to show in the book that kids are growing up in these social environments, she continues, that they're parent-shaped. Well, yes. Parents, adults, typically are who shape communities. That inner cities are so bad isn't because little 3-year-old toddler shit pants are running around doing it. It's because the parents either take care or don't take care of places. That's why affluent neighborhoods are so good, because the adults take care of them. Bad neighborhoods are bad because the adults don't take care of them. Why doesn't Flint, Michigan have clean water? Because the adults don't know what the hell they're doing. Yes, it's racism that people who live smack dab in the middle of the first world and have received billions of dollars in government funding somehow can't clean their drinking water. Yeah, that's somehow the fault of racism, and not the fact that they're just inept adults. We have to face the reality at some point that some people were able to build first world nations and some people were not. And that the people who were not are always going to have to try to play catch up, and that it should not be white people's jobs, as the nose tribes lady chick is asserting here, that it is white people's job to somehow be the parents of all children. They're having interactions with other people in these environments, and that's, I think, where they're developing their own ideas about race and privilege and inequality. Pinsker. This is another name check on aisle 3. Some of the parents in your book may see the problems with choosing... Look at this. What did I tell you? Pitching softball, playing softball so she can knock it out of the park. This guy doesn't ask the question, is it a problem? He just asserts. Some of the parents in your book may see the problems with choosing mostly white neighborhoods or schools. Why is it a problem? Look, every immigrant in the world chooses mostly white nations to flee to. Are they problematic? No, it is something that is widely known on a level of objectivity, mirrored reality, reproducibility, repeatability, empiricism, that all white locations are safer, more prosperous, kinder, gentler places for people to grow up and experience a better life. Now, of course, that's not to say how that arose. If you want to argue that arose because because they're racist and exclusionary, or if they're somehow raping and pillaging communities of color who otherwise would have all these things. That's an entirely different topic. But that affluent white neighborhoods are safer places to live, have better schools, give your children a better chance to get better jobs. Yes, parents are going to choose them. Immigrants choose them. Choose these nations. This is something everyone can see. That you call that a problem is a problem. You can't just assert that this is a problem. Hey, it's a problem if you want to live in a place that's safe and prosperous. That's a problem. Are you literally going to argue that white parents should be taking their kids to Compton Avenue and bringing them up in inner city schools, where hopefully they'll get some dumbass white savior, Michelle Pfeiffer or Hillary Swank, to come in and teach them how to be human beings in some white savior movie that liberal Hollywood creates? Oh, grabbing a drink of water there. Ooh, the air's so dry here. I don't know why. Okay, problems with choosing mostly white neighborhoods or schools, but the explanation they usually provide for these choices is that they just want what's best for their children. So this is problematic. I want what's best for my children. Well, that's a problem, that you want what's best for your children. Why? Because there are other parents who can't do what's best for their children. And that's my problem. How? Well, that means you're supporting racial inequality. No! You're perpetuating racial inequality. No! Yes, you are. How do you figure? I'm a sociologist. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me again, anybody. Ain't nary a time. Of course, I've never been popular enough to get Vosh or anybody like that to holler at me, that's for sure. But ain't nary a time in my life on Twitter, on YouTube, that I've talked to these people who are social scientists and they tried to give me the what for, that they've ever accepted a debate with me. Not a one time. The only time is on Halsey English's channel when CV and I debated white privilege as a concept. And she spent the entire time talking about racism. And I spent the entire time trying to say racism is not white privilege. Can we please get back on topic? That's how the whole debate went. She's a nice enough girl. I believe, I don't know, don't quote me, that she's male to female transgender. I believe she likes to be referred to as they, so I will say they, and not to be rude. But that's the only one. That's the only one time that anybody's ever had the balls to step up and put their discipline on the line. This rationale is generally considered understandable, even honorable, but can you talk about its dark side? Oh God, Luke, come to the dark side. I am white. I'm a white father. He couldn't have been a black father because he wouldn't have been in the movie, am I right? Hagerman. Oy vey, schmuck. One of the things I talk about at the Bat Mitzvah and Mazel Tov in the book is when I call this conundrum of privilege, which is that these parents have a lot of resources economically as well as status as white people. They don't have any fucking status as white people. I've said shite. I want to post this on YouTube. I don't want to get to cursing and give them a reason to take it down. It's not white people that gives them this status, you dumb mutt. Do white people in the Appalachia and the poor sections of Midwest, the poor neighborhoods in Texas, out there in Oklahoma, do they have status just because they're white people? Or is it money that gives people status? If you're saying that white is what gives you status, then rappers and basketball players and football players and celebrities and bankers and lawyers and Barack Obama, who is president of the United States, none of these people have status because they're black and not white and they'll get status. You don't know what you're saying. Look, she has a PhD in sociology. She would be considered an intellectual. I don't have a PhD. I would be considered in popular society as her intellectual inferior. She would literally be considered superiorly intellectual, probably if I keep talking like that. She would be considered my superior in an intellectual capacity. When anybody who would listen to me and listen to her would know that that is so far removed from the truth that she might go curl up under the bed and cry if somebody smacked her with the truth bombs, that her whole entire discipline is literally just a pyramid scheme. Social sciences were he would say reinvigorated, but what they were redesigned, recrafted by Karl Marx to be non-empiricist. What this meant is that, like natural sciences had to rely on empiricism so that you could graduate a testable, falsifiable hypothesis to the position of a theory, that in social sciences you shouldn't have to do that because you might be emotionally invested in something that you really want the society to see as true for the good of society. I am not making this up. People can go look at how Karl Marx theorized this, hypothesized this, however you want to put it. Postulate it would be the more accurate terminology to use. How Karl Marx postulated this, that in social sciences, if there was something that you believed that society needed, yet couldn't prove what's happening to justify it, that you therefore did not need empiricism to claim that it was true. That is the back off of which sociology is constructed. That is the exact way these people practice sociology. I don't think she's a bad actor. I think she's a bad faith actor, but I don't think she's a bad intentioned actor. I probably don't think that she really wants white people to die and go extinct. Not that she'd shed a tear if they did. I don't think she wants that. I think that she has smelled her own farts, or however the phrase goes, so long and so often that she believes her own hype. That she can view racial inequality because she's never looked at but one half of the graph. That's what these people do inside of their echo chambers. They only look at one half of the graph. They don't know the Appalachian region even exists. You bring it up to them and they look at you like, are you using a Nazi talking point on me? There was a video clip where somebody mentioned something similar. I don't think they mentioned Appalachia. I think they mentioned some poor state in Kentucky, which the East End is Appalachia. And I believe it was Michael Eric Dyson. And he just gave them this wide-eyed, scalding look like, are you Joseph Goebbels? What kind of Nazi trick are you playing on me, white man? Because they just don't know anything about it. It's not in their purview. It's not in their wheelhouse. It's not in their area of concern. Look, care is seismic. Do we really think all the black people cared that Rodney King got beat up? They didn't know Rodney King. They didn't know him. Let's face it, most black people weren't mistreated by the police. Most people who are mistreated by the police aren't even black. Double the amount of white people are killed year on year by police. Although black people have 7 times more interactions with the police. That sort of thing is seismic. That means the closer you are to its epicenter, the more you feel the reverberations. The further are you removed from it, likewise, it runs logically the same, the less you feel. But it's advantageous in a political sense, in a status sense, and for Hagerman, in a financial sense, to care. She continues, they can use those resources to set up their own child's life in ways that give them the best education, the best health care, all the best things. And we have this collectively agreed upon idea in our society that being a good parent means exactly that. Providing the best opportunities. Well, look, can you just smell the smug condescension coming from this? Like she is implying that that's the only way to be a good parent? No, that is not what they're saying. Yes, it is being a good parent if you can give your child all those things. But not being able to give your child all those things and know it means that you're not a good parent or not as good of a parent. You can be poor and still love your kid and still raise your kids right. There are tons of people out there who had poor childhoods. Not everyone was Trump and got a small loan of $1 million. There are a lot of great people out there. Dr. Ben Carson, who was raised in a type of inner city ghetto. Not sure on the status of his father. Statistically speaking, he probably didn't have a father present in the home. Statistically speaking, that might be wrong. and he had to work harder. Does that mean his mother was any less of a good parent for trying and raising him up to be a well-adjusted young man? Bright and intelligent and driven? The smug condescension comes of like, again, go back to the Biden. Poor kids are every bit as smart as white kids. That's what this kind of attitude is. You know, poor parents can be every bit as good as white parents, is what this is saying. It's tragic how narrow-minded the people are who believe that they're absorbing everything from life. All these myriad influences that are shaping their vast and varied and nuanced opinions. They're not nuanced at all. They're very black and white. They're incredibly black and white in their thinking every single time. Every single topic. They only know, whoop, I'm going to get there in the straightest line. Whoop, whoop. When talking about good parents, you're veering on the road. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There is no straight line for good parentage. There's all kinds of different ways to be good parentage. There are good parents who are Muslims and Christians and Hindus and Buddhists and atheists and Amish. There are just good. There are good parents who are young, good parents who are old, good parents of every race, good parents of every nationality. Just like there are bad parents of all the same. So trying to equate having wealth with being a good parent, shame on you. But then some of the parents are also people who believe strongly in the importance of diversity and multiculturalism and who want to resist racial inequality. And these two things are sort of at odds with one another. No, not really. Not really. You can support all of these things and not want them to be part of your life. Like I said, there's no moral conundrum here. Like you would like to paint it as some conundrum. No. A lot of people volunteer at soup kitchens where they will go and feed the working poor and the homeless. Help volunteer their time, volunteer their money, volunteer their labor. A lot of times just because they're good people and they believe that these people need a chance and these people need warm bellies that are full just like everybody else. By your logic, if they're not bringing them into their kitchen and doing it, there's something wrong with them. It's problematic. Look, the kinds of attitudes like yours are going to make people not want to help anyone. If your literal argument is that you cannot be for diversity and you cannot be for inclusion unless you allow your neighborhoods and your schools to be flooded with diversity who are too poor to live in this area, therefore you have to support them. You ask too much. You demand too much. Not only in a financial sense, but in a humanity sense. Do we not have rights as human beings to live with whom we want, to raise our children howsoever we want? I mean, two limits that it's hurting other people, but you have not and will not and cannot demonstrate that how they live is what's causing black neighborhoods to be poor. They're not taking the best desks out of the black schools to put in the white schools here. They're not taking the best food items that grow there so that the wealthy white people can eat. The white people having money and wealth has no bearing whatsoever on inner cities not having that. Just like it has no bearing on mountain hollers not having that. We don't protest and complain and Mountain Lives Matters and paint signs and stuff like that because we're just trying to get on with our lives. Grabbing a drink there. These affluent white parents are in a position where they can set up their kids' lives so that they're better than other kids' lives. Well, don't put it like that. How are you a sociologist? How can you call yourself a scientist? And just like that's a quantifiable thing. Better. Put more financially secure or something like that. Just flat out better. How in the hell, who are you even to make that kind of determination about the quality of someone's life being better just because their parents have money? Their father could be an alcoholic. Their mother could be a prostitute who's cheating on their father. They could be getting used and abused. They could be getting molested and raped. You are a freaking fraud who is defrauding people to sell a corny book to bash an entire race of people and stoke up hatred against them, this should qualify as hate speech. You horrible bigot. You intellectually vapid. Oh man, I will get banned from every platform to say what I really feel about these people. You have no right whatever to make a quality judgment about someone's entire life because they have money. There are a lot of people who have lived in good neighborhoods, who have still grown up with neighbors or family members that have molested them and ruined their entire fucking lives, or whose parents were abusive, or even absentee parents, where parents only care about fancy cocktail parties, or they're working all hours of the night and they're raised by babysitters and they grew up unstable and grow up to become school shooters or serial killers or something. You're supposed to be a sociologist. You're supposed to be the one telling me this. You fraud. I thought the diary in a ballpoint pen was a fraud. This tops that. You are a fraud. So their dark side is that ultimately people are thinking about their own kids. Look, that's the dark side. Think about your own kids. That's the dark. Man, you tell me that when they used to tar and feather people. I'm not saying they should do that. Obviously, I'm not saying they should do that. But you gotta wonder if they ever just caught people up pushing stupid propaganda as hatred on other people. Imagine someone she's a professor in college. She's a professor. She deals, where did I read this? In the African American and Gender Studies program. She's an assistant professor of sociology at Mississippi State University. She's in there teaching young, impressionable minds that caring about your kids is dark. I'm telling you, I know I ain't got a lot of viewers. I know this won't get a lot of views. Hell, I ain't got nobody in here watching. But this is probably the most important topic that I'll ever touch on in a stream. People are thinking about their own kids, and that can come at the expense of other people's kids. No, it's not, because it's not my job to take care of other people's kids. If the neighbor can't feed their children at all, yeah, I'm probably going to help. That might take a little bit of food out of my kid's mouth, but it's not going to cause my kids to starve. But if my neighbor just can't afford to send his kids to private school, and I can, and I'd like to get my kids on the hell with college. I'd like to get them on a trade school track, maybe to become Air Force mechanics or big rig mechanics. So I'd like to get them in a private school, but my neighbor can't. You know, that's not my responsibility. To say that there's a dark side, what are we supposed to do as parents? Put all of our money, yeah, well, that's precisely what they want us to do. Put all our money into a big pot so that it can be divvied up among the non-whites. Because no matter how many times we're hamstrung in a race, we somehow keep winning the race. And we can't put that down to culture being genetic, because no, that's just too taboo of a topic. We can't put that down into some people just not having fathers in the home to help give them that sort of head start. No. So what is your answer, Jewish lady? To get white husbands out of the home at a rate of 85%? To handicap white people even more? And then they'll still be leading in the race, and then y'all will still cry and say it's inequality, instead of just looking at the one common denominator. The one common denominator in everything you look at isn't white people. It's the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, wink, wink, hint, hint. Anybody with over a 68 IQ can piece that together themselves. What would it look like for a white affluent parent to make a choice not to give their children the best? Is that a matter of not calling the school to get the best math teacher? Or is it a more proactive thing a parent might be able to? So you want parents who have the means to send their kids to the best school to send them to just a crappy school. Why? What benefit is that? Look, okay. Let's just say she's objectively incorrect, but let's say that she is correct somehow. That caring only about your kids is having a negative impact on other parents' kids. Okay, let's say that's true. It's not true, but for the sake of argumentation, let's say that is true. Therefore, you send your kids to the school that's performing more poorly. Now how's that helping those kids? How's that helping those kids? How's that helping those parents? It's not. It's not. It's just causing an undue strain on the kid who could have went somewhere else. It's why governments have been fighting. It's why activist groups have been fighting. Communities have been fighting for school choice vouchers. It's why Gorilla Harris fussed so much at Joe Biden about busing, because those kids needed to be taken to the better schools, not the other way around. And if the argument is that if enough white kids get in that school that it becomes a better school, then you've really got to question what you're even talking about here, because you're coming around to my way of thinking, which is the objectively correct way of thinking, because it's the only way of thinking that models reality. That, as Wichita falls, so falls Wichita Falls. And that's all we got to say about that. Hagerman says in response to this, I think part of it is how we choose to define the best, quote, end quote. Some of the parents in my book, they rejected the idea that their child needed to be in all the AP classes. They valued other elements of their children's personality, such as their concerns about ethics or fairness or social justice. See, like I said earlier, they're white, affluent, and let's be real here. She says they're white, affluent parents. The vast majority of them are probably Jewish parents. But we know about the shape-shifting when it's time to chastise white people. That, hey, fellow kids. We know how that works. But let's just say that they're white, and let's just say that she's telling the truth. There's a lot of suspension of disbelief that we have to do in order to follow along with her. But let's do it. I mean, let's pay her the respect that she would not pay us. Let's do that. Let's be the better, more intelligent people here. And let's just say that, these are white parents, and they're teaching their children about social justice. But because they're not full-on communists, ready to give up half of everything they have to just random colored families of color, however they want to say that these days, I don't even know, I can't keep up. Then that's somehow a dark side, that's somehow bad. She said it over and over. There were a handful of parents in my study who resisted having a separate track for AP students, for example, which can sometimes be a segregating force within schools. Well, I mean, that's why they want to get rid of it. AP stands for Advanced Placement. They weren't called AP when I was in elementary and middle school. Not until we got to high school were they called AP. They were called GT classes, Gifted and Talented. I was in a couple. Some kids were in all of them, some kids were in none of them. They had a bunch of them when I went to elementary school. It was like 6 or 7 of them. Then they had even more when I got to middle school. I was in a couple of them. There were a couple of things I was good at. I got decent verbal acuity, although I got a speech impediment and a southern accent, so it's hard to tell that a lot of the times. Wasn't that good with mathematics. I was very good with problem solving, though. Anything like puzzle-oriented, problem solving, anything. Like they had in 7th grade, this thing, they give you popsicle sticks and a hot glue gun and a grocery bag and string. And they said, can you make a container that you can drop an egg off the roof with and not break? Probably 80% of the kids wrapped that egg up in a plastic bag and tried to make it like springy, like cushioned. Couple of the kids tried to make like the intricate glider with wings. I looked at it, and the first thing that just popped into my head is, this is a parachute. And they lauded me around like a freaking Caesar triumph, because I was the only one in class whose egg didn't break. And I'm looking at everybody else like, this don't look like a parachute to y'all? Y'all never had them little army men that you threw up in the air and it poof, and it made a parachute? I didn't even make a crate for my egg. I just made a seat for 4 popsicle sticks. glued together to make a little seat, and then I tied the egg in there with a string. And I tied the string to the bag. And that's it. And I said, throw it. And they threw it off the roof, and it glide down like a jelly bird. I mean, come on, man. Nobody else can figure this out. But supposedly, that was the test. The way that they said it, that it was so obvious that people go to, you have to create this intricate contraption. And that's how it was pitched. The shop teacher was drawing this. It looked like a crate that had legs on the bottom and little notches cut out of the popsicle stick, and he demonstrated that if you did that it would absorb impact, and in each little segment that broke would absorb more impact, and all the kids are looking around buying into it like, man, this has to be really complex or it'll never work. And I'm like, I'm making a parachute. I'm gonna make a parachute. That's what I'm gonna do. Anyways, that was a big aside. There were also affluent parents who were very much opposed to having police officers in schools, and they were using their position of influence in the community to try to get the police officers out of there. Maybe others would be aware of their presence at PTA meetings, making sure they're not dominating them and making sure they're not putting their own agenda ahead of their peers' agendas. Well, look, I mean, everybody's got their agendas. Everybody wants to put their agendas forward. I mean, let's just be honest here. If you're allowing people from crappier schools to put their agendas forward, you might not want to do that because it might be those agendas that are making those schools crappier. If you got something that works, the schools in these neighborhoods work. Why do you want to change these schools and what they're doing, lady, instead of having the communities of color, because apparently white people can't be poor in this Jewess's mind? Why aren't you having them emulate what white people are doing? No, never that. Never having parents that get married before they have kids and mother and fathers. Never do what white parents are doing for success. No, you shouldn't have to emulate that. They should be able to live in their own cultural milieu and still have the same success rate. No, you're not a scientist. You prove it. Some parents in the book seem to think of diversity as something that could be let in selectively to teach certain lessons to their kids. This came up with a lot of parents' decisions to send their kids to public schools, which were more diverse than the private ones. Can you talk about how, for a lot of affluent white parents, diversity is something that can be toggled on and off as they please? Well, look, I got a problem with this premise as a question too. Toggled on and off as you please. Are you saying that people don't have a right to go move and live where they want? Look, well, I talked about it on previous streams. Black folks want to cry that they're in inner cities now because of pollution or whatever. But when housing projects were first proposed after segregation to give them a head start, which has fucking lasted 60 years and still nothing doing in that, but that's another topic. They didn't want them out in the county where the air was clean and the grass was green and the people weren't mean. They didn't want them there. They weren't close enough to shopping centers. They weren't close enough to restaurants. They weren't close enough to parks and rec. They didn't want them out there. They demanded them smack dab, just like they demanded a war on drugs and crack cocaine getting harsher treatments until other black activists started saying, well, black defendants are getting more time than white defendants. Black people with crack cocaine are getting more than white people with meth. And meth is just as bad. Yeah, but nobody's ever went to the government crying on hands and knees for harsher punishments for methamphetamines like they did for crack cocaine. So then they just turned around and reneged on it. Indian givers and took it back. No, now there's a war on drugs. Now you got to stop this. Because it's disproportionately affecting black people. Same thing with housing projects. No. Now we live in these places and they're not healthy for us. They're not conducive for us. You know, what else can we do for y'all? Honest question. What else can we do for y'all that y'all won't do for yourselves? How many years? How many generations? How many trillions of dollars? How many more capitulations? How much more can you ask for and then still end up behind the 8 ball and then say, because I'm black, because racism? And then we capitulate again. A whole nother generation of white people made to feel guilty and depressed and ashamed for something that they had no hand in, and told by dumb bitches like this that they're responsible for it because they're perpetuating it. Hagerman's answer to this, I think the best example was when these two parents decided to pull one of their children out of a pub. Notice how scripted this is. Like I say, pitching softball so she can hit him out of the park. How pre-planned this is. How everything that he asked, she's just got this one perfect example for it. Almost like none of it ever happened. And they just scripted this like fiction. But we're willing to take it as truthful. We're willing to give her that benefit of the doubt. I think the best example is when these two parents decided to pull one of their children out of a public school after a racist incident there. There was a lot of turmoil, and when things basically got too challenging, they just picked up their kid and took him to a different school, a private school. And the ability to do that was not only a reflection of their economic privilege, that they had the resources to suddenly mid-school year send their kid to an expensive private school, but also a reflection of racial privilege, and that you can somehow escape racism when you want to as a white person. Well, they weren't escaping racism, were they? They weren't escaping racism. They were escaping a situation that was becoming dangerous and untenable for their child, and decided, no, we're going to pull our child out of school because, despite these parents being progressive liberals, they're on Twitter and Facebook, and they see all of the videos, all of the white kids getting beaten to heads with dustpans and getting jumped, and all the handicapped girls getting raped. They see this. They're not blind to it. They'll report you for retweeting it with hashtags like 13do50 because they don't want to believe that it's true, but they see it and they know which end of an ace is up. So, but they don't believe necessarily that this is something endemic, specific to all of one people. But then when they see it happening and their children are put in risk, why wouldn't they move? It's got nothing to do with escaping racism. It's got something to do with escaping racial violence. So, per this dumb bitch's logic, that 1,300 white people a day are attacked by black people in the streets of the United States of America. That's what, white people paying their toll for racism? Or if white people want to escape that and not go through that they can avoid racism. Is that what that is? I don't understand. I don't understand this. Black people can get away from it too. Black people leave the hood all the time. Moving on up to the east side. It was popular in the fucking 60s. Are you kidding me right now? To call that racism. What even makes you think? You said that there's a racist incident there and there was a lot of turmoil. Of course the incident isn't provided with any objectivity, with anything empirical. Because we see 99 times out of 100 that these racist incidents, quote unquote, are hoaxes. It's what we constantly see. Yet there's still turmoil created and white people are targeted by black people at these places because why not? Why not? There's no punishment for fucking with white people in this world. There's not. There's not any punishment for it. Ahmaud Arbery, suspect for criminal trespassing and theft, charges at a guy with a gun and tries to steal his gun so he can shoot the guy. Gets shot. We shall not be moved. No justice, no peace. Protests, calling for their heads. They're going to be political prisoners like what's-his-face in Charlottesville, 825 years behind bars. We see the writing on the wall. White kid kidnapped, tortured on Facebook. Unsupervised probation for the people who live streamed that. Black man goes and kills two white elderly people at a cemetery just for being white. Not even on the locals. So, I mean, come on. You're a sociologist. You're the one supposed to be telling me this shit. Because you're supposed to be objective. You're supposed to be impartial. But you're not. You have an agenda. If you have an agenda, you're not a scientist. You can be a scientist who has an agenda, but you cannot use an agenda to create your science. There's a world of difference there, and it's not nuanced. It's right down your alley, strict black and white. You cannot use your agenda to paint your results. If you were empirical with your methodology and actually respectful of the empiricism of your scientific discipline, then you could still have an agenda and have an opinion on the outside of that. But you have bastardized your entire discipline by molding the two together, and you're nothing but an overpaid hack. Because you're a Jewish female, you're promoted to the ranks of professor. Somebody published your dog shit in hardcover and put a price tag of $75 on it. Yeah, there are people who have privilege, and it's not white folk. Pinsker asks again, so far we talked about how white parents shape their children's views on race, but a big theme of this book is that kids themselves actively contribute to the formation of racist beliefs. How does that work? Okay, first, what are you qualifying as racist beliefs? And is Hagerman in a position to judge what a racist belief is? Because I got a strong feeling that these, supposedly being the children of white, quote unquote, progressive liberals, quote unquote, are not going to think that black people or Latino people are somehow lesser than white people. They're going to think exactly the opposite of that, that white people are lesser than them and white people have no culture and white people just stole everything because they're the kids of progressives. So I cannot wait to know what these racist beliefs are. One of the things I was really struck by was how frequently some of these children used the phrase, that's racist or you're racist. What did I tell you like 3 questions ago? How convenient this is, how staged this is, how they sat down and scripted this up so that every single thing this guy asks, she comes with an on-the-nose example that fits it perfectly so everybody can clap. Just how fake can this be? You know, you heard CNN was the fakest news organization, and they were like, hold my beer. They were using this word in context that had nothing to do with race. They were playing chess, and they would talk about what color chess pieces they wanted to have, and then one of them said, oh, that's racist. So things that had to do with colors, but also sometimes just out of the blue, instead of saying that's stupid, these kids have taken the phrase that's racist and inverted it in such a way that it's become meaningless. Yeah, these kids have done that. These kids have done that. Your entire book is based on doing that. Of crying that something's racist to the point where it no longer has any meaning. Yet these kids in meme culture, they're the ones responsible for doing that. Not only is she a liar, smug and condescending, she's coming across like a damn child abuser. That this stuff that she pushes freely out there pushing racism to defraud people of $75 for complete and utter gibberish, devaluing entirely the meaning of racism, but it's these kids' fault. One question you occasionally bring up in the book is, what value does one parent's actions hold when going up against a systemic problem? Okay, again, I have problems with this. This Pinsker just says something flatly and just assumes that it's true. Define these problems. Measure these problems. Put your sociology into action on these problems to show that there's a problem, instead of nonsense like this, singling out white people because you know that society is so against white people that you're going to make money selling a book for $75 that just bashes white people. What value does one... Oh, I already read that. And I'm not asking does it have value, because of course it does, but I wonder how you think about... Look at how he's sitting up with the pitch here, so she can knock it out of the park with another pitch perfect example. Watch what I tell you. But I wonder how you think about all the micro level decisions that these parents are making in the context of the central conundrum. Again, referring to it as a conundrum. It's a problem. It's a problem if you're a white wealthy parent and want to give your kid a safe life, where he's not in a he or she is not in a school that's got a lot of violence, or a neighborhood that's got a lot of violence. Oh my God, man. In my book, I'm trying to highlight the tension between the broad... See, this was a setup for her to pitch her entire book here. We must be getting near the end. This is the end, my Jewish friend, the end. 6 trillion and one, the end. Of our elaborate nose jobs, the end. Trying to highlight the tension between the broad overarching social structures that organize all of our lives and the individual choices that people make from within these structures. Breaking everything down into the context of social structures really undercuts all of the hard work that the natural sciences have done that birthed these fucking gremlins when the Mogwai was fed after midnight to create social sciences. You know, genetic behaviors and genetic predispositions are just chalked up to now societal pressures, societal influences. Taking everything out of the realm of nature and putting it into nurture. Why? Because they're not near smart enough, nor want to work hard enough to make qualifications about nature. Plus, they wouldn't be able to, because it would be objectively verifiable and falsifiable if they made these determinations about nature. Whereas when they go to the nurture side, that's more abstract and more socially constructed, so they can make these vague insinuations about the nature of people's experiences and how they construct their lives within the social confines of these constructs. And they can technically sell themselves as correct on it because they're... I mean, well, you can't disprove a negative, am I right? It's like they found these little self-fulfilling circular little loopholes here that they can force this stuff into, and you can't really... It's to the point where you can't argue with them, or they'll say, you know, arguing with this is actually a social construction of white supremacy that puts you in a position of privilege to be able to talk down to something that's trying to undermine your privilege. So actually it's only a defense mechanism that's blah, 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 blah. Postmodern word salad is all you'll get from it. But yeah, her book is the new Gideon's Bible, I reckon. The best work ever done. But the best answer I can really give is that this micro level potentially could shape what goes on at the institutional or structural level. I really think, and this might sound kind of crazy, that white parents and parents in general need to understand that all children are worthy of their consideration. But that's not what you're saying, is it? You're not saying that as white parents that black children that aren't their children are worthy of their consideration. You're saying they're worthy of their money and their resources and their child rearing. So what you're basically saying throughout this whole book is that black parents are fucking horrible. I mean, seriously, where are the black activists out there who will take this book and infer from it the implication that she's putting out that that needing white parents to take care of black children, therefore she's saying that shame this horrible bitch. Because she is being racist. She's being awfully racist against white people here. I mean, incredibly racist against white people. And she's insinuating that black people don't know how to raise their kids right. Literally what she's doing. And nobody's calling her out for that because of the title of the book. It's just Bash Whitey. It's what they all should be called. This is Bash Whitey, version 18,739. That's just what it should be called. Just Bash Whitey. Volume 78 million. Bash Whitey. The idea that your own child is the most important thing, that's something we could try to rethink. No, fuck you. I bet you don't even have kids. Seriously. Seriously. Does she? I bet she don't even fucking have kids. Only somebody who doesn't have kids but has had like 7 abortions would fucking view that. You can't view your kids as most important. Jesus Christ. And I swear this is shoe on head. I'm telling you. This is crazy. She might be the worst fucking person in the world. When affluent white parents are making the decisions about parenting, they could consider in some way at least how their decisions will not only affect their kid, but other kids. Well, you know it does affect other kids. See, this is what you're missing. The forest, because you're just focused on the tree. And probably you would try to fuck that tree. Because you're a childless neo-Marxist liberal thought who's a hedonist. But see, what you're missing is that the decision each individual parent in this community makes to give their child the best is doing great things for the other children, because they come together with the understanding that their school is going to be safe, their neighborhood is going to be safe, their community is going to be clean and prosperous. This is something they're doing for each other in what is called a community. A sociologist, of all people, that does not understand the concept of community. This is what they're doing in their communities. And you know what? It's not their responsibility to do that for other people's communities. But they're not doing it. They're doing it for selfish reasons, but the results aren't necessarily only selfish. They're helping everybody in that community, everybody in that school. So they are effectively helping other people's kids. They're just not helping every other little kid in the world. Will somebody think of the children? Will somebody, get Sally Struthers back on the air? So for a price of a cup of coffee a day. What is wrong with you even? What seriously is wrong with you? This might mean a parent votes for policies that would lead to the best possible outcome for as many kids as possible, but might be less advantageous for... Oh, yeah, that's what they want. That's what they want. Let's vote for a policy that hurts my child, but helps other children. Bitch, you ain't got kids. You are a hedonist communist. Frankfurt School level. Worst person I've ever streamed about. Worst person I've ever streamed about. One of the dumbest, too. My overall point is that in this moment, when being a good citizen conflicts with being a good parent, I think, just shut up. I can't even continue to read that. I mean, really. You gotta be a good human being, and you have to help out your fellow man. And there are people who, through no fault of their own, but only through systemic equality, need your help. And they just also happen to be black, because there are no such thing as poor white people. Hoi vey, hoi gewalt, l'chaim, mazel tov. Cinnamon tov and mazel tov and mazel tov and cinnamon tov. So what's this? This is the last one I'm doing here. I've been on an hour and a half with this bullshit. I don't doubt that you're onto something. See, look how this is such setting up for this nonsense. I don't doubt that you're onto something, but pragmatically speaking, wouldn't that ignore a biological impulse to look after one's own? It's not only that it's a biological impulse, it's a biological necessity in a case-selected species. Now y'all getting into the realm of science that you don't understand because you're not scientists, much less natural scientists that deal in anything biological. It's not only a biological impulse, it's a biological imperative that for the survival of a species in a case-selected species that you must rear your young. You must rear your young. We're talking about white European folks here who are the most case-selected of the races. So as a sociologist, I'm much more interested in how things are socially constructed rather than biologically constructed. So, she's basically saying here, I'm not a scientist, so don't ask me to speak on science. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a scientist. How can you expect me to speak on science, Goyam? So as a sociologist, I'm much more interested in how things are socially constructed. I'm much more interested in things that I can argue that can't be verifiably checked out on an empirical level, because then somebody would be able to know that I'm bullshitting. So I'm just going to stick with these vague, nebulous concepts that I can construct from thin air, and to say that it's society's fault, rather than anything that's biologically necessitated, not constructed, biologically factual, not constructed. You don't construct things in biology. This is the dumbest bitch on the planet, faking as a scientist. You don't construct things biologically. Biology constructs itself through the process of evolution. You stupid fucking idiot. For example, there are lots of families who have kids who are adopted, or where parents are taking care of kids who aren't biologically theirs. I don't have any children, but I don't care very deeply about other people's. Look, I'm done. I called that shit. What did I tell you? I'm sorry. I'm done. I know nobody watched. I know I was a little boring and a little long-winded. This is important to me. If it's not important to anyone else, I understand that. I tried to keep the cursing at a minimum. I want to try to go ahead and post this on YouTube. Thank y'all if you checked it out. If not, thank you anyways. If you might watch it again in the future. I'm just here to rant a little bit, people. Catch y'all later.